Your costs will need to drop by 30%, 40% because you have AI, which is, of course, absolute bogus.
Tom Hanan bootstrapped Switzerland's biggest independent agency to more than 250 people without ever raising external funds, and he now runs FIFA World Cup campaigns out of Zurich. He just told us the one thing every agency is too scared to say out loud: AI is not making their work cheaper. He also gives us a deep inside look into how to build a culture which is able to navigate chaos, a lesson which is hugely important to any startup founder out there. Enjoy!
But it's like basically giving the people a Ferrari and they don't even have a driver's license. You technically could have a MIT A-grade student, but this person might be boring as hell. So you need to have a setup as an organization to deal with chaos, to be extremely flexible on the way you work, you staff, you tackle challenges.
What is like the one advice you would give knowing what you know now?
This is Melanie.
And this is Christian.
You're listening to Follow the Gradient, the weekly podcast with actionable insights about how to build a business while staying sane.
So, Tom, welcome to the show. Webrepublic is, I think, 16 years old. You guys are around 250 people, completely bootstrapped. You and Toby never raised a round. So, when you started out in 2009, was that a conscious decision back then, or did that just happen the way it did?
So actually, thanks for having me, Christian. Glad to be here on the Gradient. And yeah, it's actually a very valid question. So starting the Webrepublic in the beginning was something that where many, I think, it was a right moment. I was with Google for 8 years. I had also the luck to be pre-IPO at Google. I also, from my responsibilities, was not entwined in. I didn't have a family back then, so no kids. I didn't have a large or a house or anything like that. So my cost level was rather low. Okay, so my running costs. So I actually was able to kick off the Web Republic very lean from a cost point of view. And I was also able to basically say, look, I will not pay myself any salary for the coming years. So this is going to be my invest. With that background, that personal situation, I was able to really kick off the Web Republic with a very clear plan and already starting with a client. I think this was also important, allowed us to already have a certain level of cash flow within the first month.
How long did it take, would you now say in retrospect, to a point where you then really thought, okay, this company can sustain in the long term?
So I think the first we were quite surprised in a certain way how quickly the ball got rolling. In all fairness, of course, it helped a lot that my background, I had my experience at Google, coming from Google, and the product that we were focusing on at first was really the Google product. And then, of course, as quite quickly we evolved into new topics as well. And today, Google is one of many channels that we cover. But I think it was the first 6 months where we really saw, wow, this is generating momentum. We were able to think about hiring more people, going through that process, and that I think we realized quite quickly that what we're doing actually is and the approach, and I think this is important. The philosophy and approach that we chose was the right one. Because keep in mind, we started out in a time where Switzerland was undergoing a financial crisis. So many companies were laying off. The agency market is already quite a saturated one. So you had many large agencies already very prominent and dominant on the market. So it's not like the market was waiting for another agency. So I think it was very important also from the beginning on to have the right focus, the right philosophy, and do what we're doing in a little bit a different way. So be more, first of all, passionate about what we're doing, be more data driven and scientific about what we're doing, and smarter in the way we work together with the client and help him to be successful.
If you would now talk to your younger self, the younger self who's just about to start out to start the company, what is like the one advice you would give knowing what you know now?
So there are different elements. On one hand, I would definitely invest earlier in a professional HR. That is something that I think I lacked too long, right? The second point is when you look at the infrastructure. So, for instance, your accounting system, right? The accounting system we were working with was okay if you're a company up to 30 people, right? But we quickly exceeded those 30 people. And then we were stuck with a system which does not fit anymore the size. So basically switching in onto a new system was just it's a painful process. So also thinking a little bit bigger. And of course, you try as a startup, you try to keep your costs low, everything's fine, but also keep in mind that you, of course, plan to grow and you should think early enough about the structure and the tech that will require for you to actually grow and scale.
And I think so when I look at the audience which listens to our podcast, we are obviously navigating an ecosystem which is heavily dominated by what we would call a traditional VC funded path to build a company. So at some point, an external investor comes in and seeks to hypercharge to whatever you're doing. Now, was there in the last 16 years on your journey a situation where you thought, okay, we do need external funding?
I think external funding, again, for the good and bad. I think during times, take for instance, COVID, it would have probably given me a little bit better night's sleep, knowing that there is a partner there that has the funds to keep us running through very uncertain times, right? On the other hand, of course, every VC or PE that is backing you, they have expectations, rightfully. And basically, you need to, and you will be working very much along their strategic path. Every VC, they have a 5-year plan to exit, and you need to go full throttle, buy other agencies, et cetera, and grow. And it has proven from many different companies in my space that this path actually proves to be not trivial. Not trivial because especially agencies in our space, they have a very strong and a very unique culture. And mixing the culture actually is, I think, in those processes, buy and build, quite difficult. So today and looking back, I'm proud and happy that we never relied or had to use any external funding to grow. So it's all and always bootstrap. My life could have been easier with external funding, but I believe that bootstrap really also helped us to do what we're doing in a little bit more focused way because we didn't have the millions to spend on stuff that we might not really need.
And so you guys are also with your size, which is on the one hand very significant for a company in your space. On the other hand, there is quite some international players which are significantly larger. Still, and I think you also alluded to that in our preparation meeting, you guys have been running huge campaigns for instance, the FIFA World Cup in the past. So speaking of that, the size which you have now gives you unique advantages, like, for instance, maintaining a culture, which we will also come back later on. Is there do you think there is opportunities you have to actively say no to, or you have been missing out because maybe the bootstrapping path does not allow you to, let's call it, scale in a sense you could have done with external funding, or how do you look at that?
Yeah, absolutely. On the one hand, of course, scaling internationally could be a lot easier if you have the funding, if you have a cool VC partner that also maybe opens door to new clients. No doubt about it, right? But you mentioned the FIFA mandate before. and several World Cups that we managed, the Women's World Cup or Euros or whatnot, the complexity of such a mandate, in my point of view, and this is just really my opinion, can only be tackled if you really have all the relevant disciplines and know-how under one roof. So it would not succeed a mandate like this if, for instance, I would have my social team in Germany, my content team in Switzerland, my like this setup which many of those international or network agencies, this is basically how they work, right? So it's very fragmented resource. So from a management point of view, dealing with such a complexity as the physical presence, I think, and being all under one roof is a very good example on why that setup makes sense in this specific case. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So because you mentioned culture and you mentioned that the strong alignment within a given team is extremely important to pull off complexity. And I think this is something which many other companies face as well, that struggle. They need to execute hugely complex, let's say, go-to-market motions, which are obviously connected to a product which you have, no matter if you do it physical or in the software world. So for, let's say, founders or business operators who are thinking about how do we align the team, what are the ingredients of the recipe you have there that you guys can execute this? We're going to take a very quick break to thank our partner of this episode, Archip by Merki Baumann. If you're a tech entrepreneur, you know that building a company can create a level of wealth that is honestly just more complex than what traditional banks are built for. Most solutions out there are one size fits all, but tech wealth isn't. That's where Archip comes in. They have decades of experience specifically advising tech founders. What we think is unique here is how they bridge that gap. They call it tech banking with tradition. They help you navigate both your business and your personal wealth with a clear long-term focus. If you're ready to take those next steps, check them out at archip.ch.
So I think the number one ingredient is culture, right? And now your question is already very close to the question of the remote work and all of that, all of those topics, right? So I'm very firm believer, in culture, that you have the team that has the passion to really do some extraordinary work together. And of course, the World Cup is a good example where everybody gets very exciting. It's a highly emotional game and all of that. And it's also a privilege working on such a mandate. But you not only have an exciting product like the World Cup, but you might also have a bank or insurance company, right? Still getting the team together and really fighting every day to turn around every stone to make the best impact on the campaign not only requires absolute rock star skill set, but really also a very close knit of how the team works together and exchange idea learned from experience. So on your social side, what happened versus on the paid side, this happened, and then analytics says, hey, but we basically saw those trends and wiggles in the statistics of the campaign. So this needs to happen, this kind of buzz and groove among the team to really fight for the performance of the account and the client. And this does not happen in a video call. No. Call me old-fashioned, but this is where I firmly believe the value of the physical presence of the people that sit in the same room is very high.
And how would this, so if I want to put myself in the shoes of someone who's working on the campaign for the, let's say, Women's FIFA World Cup, like how does my daily work look like? And I don't mean in the sense of really in the details, what do I do when, but what are the rituals we execute? How do we align ourselves? You spoken on, we are sitting obviously in the same office. How does that look like so that others can learn from that?
Again, FIFA is a very extreme case, right? But if we stick to that case, I think my advice be always be ready for chaos. Expect a very structured way. I can give you an example. Take the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. One of the main sponsors was Budweiser, as you might know. And of course, beer has a little bit of alcohol. 2 days before the kickoff of the World Cup, the government of Qatar said no advertisement with alcohol is allowed, which of course is a little bit awkward because your whole campaign and everything was basically in place. So you have to react super duper fast. Nobody prepares you for something like that. So I guess my message here is, of course, in a perfect world, everything is structured and you have a clear process that gives you efficiency and all of that good stuff. But oftentimes, reality is a very different one. And I think if it is this example that I just mentioned, if it is the geopolitical uncertainties that we're living in right now, it's very difficult to plan, right? So you need to have a setup as an organization to deal with chaos, to be extremely flexible on the way you work, you staff, you tackle challenges. I think that is a absolute precedent, yeah.
How do you, and also maybe thinking about your learning journey there over the last 16 years, like how do you identify people with this mindset and people who actually seek these types of situations in recruiting? Because it's one thing to ask someone, do you strive in chaos? And everybody says yes, because everybody understands something very different, what chaos is. So how you approach that?
I think that's a very good question. One of the philosophies that I strongly believe in is that you need to hire people that also have not only, of course, somewhat of a solid background in education, so we're definitely looking at that, but equally important is if the candidate has passion, is a candidate driven or just basically incompatible with clients, with other team members, whatnot, right? So usually the hiring, I basically have an X and Y scale. On one scale, I measure what is your academic and professional background. On the Y scale, I measure, I call it the oomph factor. The oomph stands for the charisma, the passion, the fire, the drive that you have, right? Because you technically could have a MIT A grade student, but this person might be boring as hell. Or you have someone that really brings the passion and this fire to the company and to the team, wants to learn, is open to learn, and really wants to dig into what can be done. I think this is what is required, especially in an environment which is undergoing such incredible fast technical evolution, right? So you need to have I would say, you need to have the perfect web Republican in our case is a mix of Captain Kirk, Yoda, and Indiana Jones. Shake it real well, and then you have basically the perfect web Republican. So the adventurer, the wise and smart person, but also able to not hide away from going also a more adventurous path to reach the goal.
What do you do? Because I think these types of personalities obviously also have very high expectations on the company they are working for, because they are looking for this spark, for this fire. They are drawn to chaos. What do you do as a company to keep these people going, engaged, motivated, to always keep them pushing?
So of course, I think on the one hand, of course, I want to be able to provide just a very cool environment, right? So I think a very cool office that also reflects the culture. So we have a very funky office. We have a lot of possibilities here. So people and clients that come to their office, they oftentimes are pretty amazed. So it's a cool place. But I think, but this is only like the static one. The softer values, the inner values is really trusting the people that they're going to be doing great stuff, allowing a culture to also fail to a certain degree, of course, and learn. So I think building a learning culture and a culture that also allows to explore is very important. And sometimes you're gonna fall on your nose. And in our case, sometimes you have someone that has a media overspend, which we need to cover. There are moments, but people need to feel that they are at the Web Republic more in a called in a campus where they can also research and just have the privilege working with amazing clients on great projects.
And to just and to just maybe for our listeners to visualize that, can you just briefly explain how you guys are set up in terms of the number of offices you have in countries, number of people?
Basically, the mothership is here in Zurich with roughly 150, 160 people. We're on 4 floors. So we have a gym. We have my old sailboat in the 3rd floor, which is now a lounge. We have the chill out room, the power nap zone. We have a lot of those powwow zones, so team zones where people can come together and have a chat, which are pretty funky. We have a wonderful terrace. We've got a beer tap with different beers, which runs 24/7 service. Yeah, but that's an environment that's again the setup that we have here, and of course we also have an office in Cape Town, South Africa, and of course we want to have the same somewhat culture in Cape Town as we have here. So applying the same philosophies of hiring for the people, for the talents, for the personalities, but also that if you come to office, that's just a damn cool office. And it really is. Everybody who from the Zurich office at me travels down to the Cape Town office, they basically say, "Hey, it just feels like another floor." So all the familiar systems, all the wacky colorfulness, and the people where you basically could all hang out and go for a drink after work and have a good time, good conversation.
Mm, super cool.
And then we have also little remote offices, but the main offices really is that I consider is Zurich and the hub in Cape Town.
Now, I'd like to turn to a different topic, which is obviously the elephant in the room these days, AI. And there is so many different angles we could approach AI. When you just hear that buzzword, and I'm sure you're hearing it also in many client conversations you have on very different levels, what's the one perspective you take or you think about this topic when you think about AI and the impacts on the kind of, let's call it, work you do or the ecosystem you are navigating in?
So first of all, if I talk with clients and they ask me questions about AI, I always ask, please be more specific because AI is a very broad word, like marketing. It's a very broad field. So what do you exactly mean? In relation to what we're doing, has been around for many years, even before Gemini or ChatGPT, right? So it's not something new. So the whole philosophy, utilizing technology to become better in what you're doing, smarter and more efficient, is exactly what still is happening. I believe, yes, it has been accelerating, but it's not something which is absolutely new. Clients sometimes expect that now you have AI and you have a big red magic button. So, by the way, your work, your costs will need to drop by 30%, 40% because you have AI, which is, of course, absolute bogus. The investment into AI and the technology is substantial, right? So we're looking at the Web Republic already on a yearly, have a 7-digit figure to deploy that technology. And if a client wants to profit from state-of-the-art insights, that is something he also needs to basically cover with the fees. So first of all, the illusion that your work will become less is what it is. It's an illusion. It's more actually the expectation that through automated processes, you might be able to gain efficiency. So potentially, instead of 3 clients, you might be able to manage 4 clients, which increases your profitability, right? So I would definitely be very careful by assessing what is it you actually need the technology for before investing in it. And this is a general statement. We see here major Swiss insurance companies and banks which go with a data Rolls-Royce like Palantir, but it's like basically giving the people a Ferrari and they don't even have a driver's license and they don't know where to drive through. So again, it's also, do you have the culture that is ready to adapt technology and change processes? If that is not the case, all your AI investment will fail.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing company like yours in the next years?
I think one of the biggest challenges we're facing is that the planning horizon became a lot shorter. And that is driven through that the planning horizon from our clients became a lot shorter. So let me give you an example. Usually you have a media or a marketing strategy, which is maybe a 1, 2, or 3 year strategy plan, right? With everything that is going on right now, the pressure on the markets, with everything and the increasing costs, we have many clients which basically move from 1 month to another month with what is the strategy, is the budget, what do they want to do, then they increase, then they decrease. And that, of course, is extremely difficult for a company, service provider, a company like ours, to actually keep somewhat of a steady run rate with that uncertainty. So how do you react to something like that? I think it's very crucial, again, that you as an organization also set up for those uncertainties. The question is, is that the new normal or will it revert again to some more long-term planning? I don't know. But the point is, if you as a client all of a sudden decrease your budget by 50% or 60 or 100%, and I have my team staffed to you, then you end up in a very difficult conversation. I can tell you, Christian, you booked this team. I need to charge you. And you're like, yeah, but I don't have anything to do. There will be two ways how this is going to end. Either you're going to say, okay, Tom, I'm going to still pay you because you have those people, even though I don't have any media spent, will not make you feel very happy. So that is a reality. So the client relationship will suffer. Or I'm going to say, okay, Christian, I'm going to start to reduce my team, which I need to be able to do like that. So having a setup that allows you for your cost flexibility, I think, is absolutely important.
When we look at the outcomes you have to achieve for clients with certain campaigns, and when we are looking at a world where you have more and more AI slop coming up, which is feeding into people's attention, what is the impact of AI on for you to be able to deliver these outcomes when there's more and more inputs, attention span is going down? How do you look at this?
I think, just as you said, the attention span is going down. The average user is getting bombarded with crappy info, and you still need to basically find placements where the advertising actually is being seen and recognized and has an impact. So my hypothesis, and it's maybe a little bit of an extreme one, is that media planning will become a lot more difficult to basically have and secure those media and advertising spaces and places which are not cramped with all this AI slop. We will be moving into much in a direction where it's much more about the quality, not the quantity of the placement. We will be moving into space where media placement might not be done programmatically or automatically, but basically special deals. Because if you enter an advertising system to a DSP, to an automatic booking platform, many things need to be standardized. And the big challenge here is that many of the platforms, media platform, advertiser platforms, they have a business model which is very much driven cost per click or cost per 1,000 impressions. So their business model inherently is incentivized rather having an article where you have a pink elephant swimming across the lake versus an article which has a more depth, right? Because the pink elephant will receive more clicks, will receive more traffic, but the attention span is a lot less. For a company like ours, it's going to be very important to really go and find placements which are much more quality rather than the quantity. Quantity is easy to do, but is basically, in my point of view, oftentimes, and if not done right, a pure waste of money.
What is, and maybe the very last question on that topic, because quality obviously is very hard. And for you as an external, let's say when you have a mandate for a client, you are a kind of external provider. When you work for a bank, you obviously on the one hand have been navigating that space for quite a long time. You've gathered experiences on what may work, what may not work. On the other hand, it's often, or my hypothesis would be, it's often the clients themselves who would actually have to understand what is quality for my target audience. What do they genuinely respond to? What are they genuinely drawn to? Because that's one of their core business kind of know-hows. It's very tightly connected to their value proposition. So who does that quality actually come from? Is that an external service provider like you? Is that the client? Is that you together? You are guiding them through that, how to arrive there? How does that work? Because that is the really hard stuff, I think.
So I think the first point, how does the target audience actually look like? You as a product owner or CMO, this is a fundamental question that you should know. We could challenge it as an agency. We're like, okay, you might think this is your audience, but this is what we see, that there's a whole different audience which actually interacts more with your product or which converts more, right? So maybe so this is a dialogue that then happens where we move away from a very tunnel vision explanation, because this is the beauty of what we're doing. We have data and we actually see certain trends. And this, I think, also one of the big values that we bring. Not only we understand and what platform will we find in the most efficient way your target audience, but we, of course, will be identifying other trends, audiences, or even product trends that might be of interest for you. If you're ice cream salesperson and you say, hey, this summer it's going to be the vanilla, and we see that the trend for chocolate ice cream is just going through the roof, then we might be able to tell you what might also consider promoting the chocolate in a very simplified world.
That makes sense. As a last section, we have what we call a rapid fire questions section. So I'm just going to ask you a couple of short questions and you can answer with whatever comes to your mind. So the first one is the most overrated word in advertising in 2026.
In 2026, AI.
A book or article that shaped how you run Webrepublic that many other people have not seen or read yet.
The story from Sir Ernest Shackleton and his boat Endurance and how he got stuck in the ice.
Yeah, love it. Read it over, I think, last Christmas. I loved it. Yeah, crazy story. If you were starting all over again in Zurich today, would you do it with the same agency or a different company entirely?
Many things I would do very different, but fundamentally, I would definitely do the same. I think it's been super exciting and not always easy. It is not easy, but it's exciting. Yeah.
Cool. Tom, thank you very much for this conversation and for taking the time. Very last question. If people want to find out more about you or what you do at the company, where can they find you?
So they can find me on LinkedIn. They can Google me. They can come and visit us here in Zurich. They can come on our website, webrepublic.com. And of course, always happy to answer questions. So thanks, Christian, for the time as well.
Perfect. Then thank you very much for the conversation.
Wonderful.
And this was another episode of our Follow the Gradient podcast.
And now we would love to hear from you. How did you like it? What should we improve? If you have any suggestions, ideas, or dream podcast guests, please let us know.
Thank you and see you again next week.